Hey everyone, welcome to Shiloh Ranch Church. At Shiloh Ranch, we have a lot of activities constantly going on. We have what's called the 1017 Project, which supplies food to families in need. We have the Firewood Project in the winter, which supplies firewood to families in need. We have amazing worship and scripture-based sermons every single Sunday, and we have an awesome team that you will get to meet along the way. But without further ado, let's head into the service.
Good morning, Shiloh Ranch Church Online. We're back at it again with a Sunday morning service.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's so good to be here with you all. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from, who you are watching with, what you're up to. We'd love to know.
Yep, just communicate in general because we like that. We like to hear from you.
Yeah.
If you want to support Shiloh and or give and so on, the app, Shiloh Ranch Church, the website, shilohranch.com. You can also send physical mail to the address right there. And, just a normal Sunday morning. We got worship coming up next. Then we'll be back here to talk about the sermon. Then we'll go straight into worship. And then we'll be back here to sign you guys off.
Yeah.
So take notes because Jordan and I will be on live tonight at 8 p.m.
Pacific Standard Time.
Yep.
On Facebook.
Yep.
It'll be fun.
So, and just ask questions, just talk in general.
Yeah.
Because we're doing that specifically for that. Jordan and I like to do it, but if we just wanted to talk to each other, we could probably just call each other
on the phone.
But no, we're doing it on live so that we can talk to you guys. And yes, so that's the plan for the day, Mary.
Yeah. So we're going to jump into worship, and then we will be back after that to talk about the sermon.
Deal.
Here we go. Into worship.
Rock of ages, cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee. Let the water and the blood from thy wounded side which flowed be of sin the double cure. Save from wrath and make me pure. Not the labors of my hands can fulfill thy lofty demands. Oh, could my zeal no respite know, and could my tears forever flow, all for sin could not atone. Thou must save, and thou alone. While I draw this fleeting breath, when mine eyes shall close in death, and when I soar to worlds unknown, see thee on thy judgment throne. Rock of ages, cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee. Oh, rock of ages, cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee.
Yeah, God, we just thank you for this time of worship. God, it's just so fun to revisit these songs and knowing that there's true stories behind them. So God, when we draw our last breath and our eyes close for the final time, we know that you will be standing, waiting for us in your kingdom. We thank you for the sacrifice of Jesus. We thank you for the freedom and the ability to sing to you, to be in community and worship you. We love you. Amen.
We are back, and we're going into the sermon.
Yeah, what do we have today?
We've got a sermon 2.0.
Oh, okay, these are my actual favorite.
Yeah, so they're, for those who don't know, it's a sermon, but in dialogue form rather than a traditional sermon is in monologue form.
Right.
So Jordan is talking to Bryson
Okay.
from a church in Phoenix.
Oh, nice.
So Bryson is also a pastor.
Cool.
So it's cool. You get to see them, talk about the stuff that we've been talking about. And he, Bryson is like, yeah, same thing.
Yeah.
We're going through the same thing. So it's
Yeah.
cool that it's not just us. It's the community as a whole, the kingdom as a
Yeah.
whole. So anyway, so we're going into that. Take notes.
Yeah.
Should be great.
Yeah. And don't forget, you guys, we do have a prayer room available virtually for you. So if you would like to pray with someone this morning, you can do so from the comfort of your home or wherever you are. So on our online platform, click the button that says request prayer, and that's going to take you into a private chat with a member of our prayer team. If you're on Facebook and you're not sure what I'm talking about, head over to our other online platform. The link should be in chat for you. Otherwise, you can always message or email us as well. So there we go.
Great.
Thank you.
Let's go into the sermon.
Yeah, we're going to go into the sermon and then we will go into worship and then we'll be back.
Deal.
All right, here we go into the sermon 2.0.
What's up, Shiloh? I'm excited for you guys to meet my buddy Bryson Isom. He jumped on to the studio there in Wickenburg. We kind of walked through the history, how we got to know each other. Bryson is one of those people that is just sneaky smart. One of the things I feel really tasked with is making the gospel available in a way that we can digest, that we can metabolize and put into practice. There's a lot of places where at a personal level, I have weaknesses as a pastor, but one of the areas that I'm the most passionate about is good education, usable education, something you can take with you, put into practice, see God at work in your life throughout the week. This is Bryson. You're going to love it. He's a great guy. He's a pastor of Relentless in Phoenix, Relentless Church, Phoenix, Arizona. Cannot tell him how much I appreciate him jumping on. You guys are going to love him. Here we go.
It's like close. I'm gonna end up going whack. Because I talk with my
I'll try to make it formal and I'll church it up.
Do you know me at all? Hello, brother Steve. Welcome to my podcast.
Welcome to
Hi, welcome to my YouTube page.
There's got to be more.
You know what? If I may.
Okay, we are here with Bryson. Bryson, we met, here we are at a digital sort of a rollout at Shiloh. You and I met through social media. Yeah. I'll tell you my part of it, and I want to hear your part of it.
Sure.
I was going through a weird time. I'm not a good mentor. And that drives some people nuts. Like that really bothers some people. And as a pastor, that's supposed to be sort of baked in. And so I've been going through this kind of a shaming from a few people of like, you need to be a better mentor. And I'm like, it's like asking an ostrich to fly. Maybe like there's things I can do, but I'm just not good at it. And I remember, if you remember the story, I was praying and I was like, God, if I'm supposed to like talk to someone, it was literally that foreign of a thought. If I was supposed to like talk to someone, like, can you just help me to understand what that would look like? And I get a message on Instagram. Take it from there.
Yeah. So I don't even know if this was a sponsored post. I don't know if you guys were trying to do ads or anything like that. I came across one of those clips. You guys have been putting those out a lot, and I just stumbled on one online one day, and I was like, "Who is this guy?" Okay, he's got a good message, and I just kept following him. And then I started stalking. Right, you go from preview.
Once you admit it, then it's not stalking.
I know
it's legal. If you say it, then it's legal.
Yeah. So I kind of went from previewing it, to stalking, and then I just reached out and I just simply wanted to say thank you. Like, thank you for putting out great content, and I was really, really moved by some of the things you were saying. I don't even remember what it was back then, which message it was or whatever, but I was just like, hey man, thanks for this.
You were trying to like keep it like real civil, like, hey man, thanks. And me going through, I'm like, we have to talk. I don't know what's going on. But I remember I called and I was like, I know this probably seems weird, but like,
I literally just finished saying, like, I don't know, like, typically what we do is so different that we don't have pastors reach out ever. Like, it's not like I've got like this group of pastors that I stay friends with or anything like that. I'm not against it, but
Right.
it was a meaningful thing in my life of God being like, hey, I'm still the one, I'm the one pulling all the strings here, and what I remember about our conversation is just kind of both of us going like, something could be different. This could be done different. This is the burnout. Maybe, I don't know if that's kind of a dramatic word, but like, it feels like that what we're doing, the way that we're doing it isn't sustainable. And just to hear someone else going through that shared experience, you know, and you and I are both in the same profession, but I would say that anybody in the world can understand that moment where somebody comes along and goes, I've lived that experience, or I'm living that experience also.
Yep.
Maybe we should be friends. And that's, as guys, I don't think we're not really prone to admitting that.
No, and the way that I've been thinking about it is like, it really was that timely bigger brother presence for me. And I still remember the first time that you actually came down and showed up at a service. And
did I tell you I was coming?
I don't remember.
I feel like I didn't. I feel like we got off a flight or something. I don't remember.
I think it was like, it kind of felt like it was like, yeah, I'd love to come to a service sometime. And then you like showed up, and I was like, oh, dude, Jordan's here. This is amazing. What do I say? What do I do? What do I do with my hands? Like, I was like, I don't know what to do. And
man, Jordan is way less impressive in person. I
he's way taller in person than I thought.
So overrated.
And I'll never forget, after the service, man, you were super encouraging. And but you said something. I don't even know if you remember saying this. You're like, man, he's like, you basically said, I don't know how, if you keep doing this, like, I don't know how you're going to last. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, man, just all of the energy in service and all of the energy of preaching and all of you like ping ponging around, meeting everybody's. And I was like, you know what? That's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
And I don't even, like I said, I don't know that if you remember saying that at all.
Yeah.
And I just remember like, there's something here that this guy has that I need to find out more of, like more of the story, what's going on. And that honestly just kind of kicked off everything from the mentor aspect, I would say, for me anyway. Maybe you felt different about it, but I was like, this guy's got something. He's been down the road before.
Let me read something real quick. If you're at home, if you're listening, we're going to go to Ephesians chapter 2. This is actually your stuff. We're preaching Bryson's stuff this week, so thank you. Slightly less research and digging that I got to do this week.
Sure.
Ephesians chapter 2, verse 1, we're going to go 1 through 10. It says, as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and of the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. And God raised us up with Christ, seated us with him in heavenly realms of Christ Jesus, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace expressed in his kindness to us in Christ Jesus. When I hear that, let me tell you what I hear, and then I know that you've had a chance to look at it a little bit deeper. I'm curious your thoughts, but I used to think of lost in transgression, lost in the sin nature as being you were naughty. And I think it actually kind of says it as like you were kind of naughty, and now, God, through his correction and discipline, he's making you slightly less naughty.
Right.
And, if it all goes well, we're gonna gather up once a week. We're going to get around a group of other not naughty people. We'll like display our naughtiness.
Right.
And then I guess that's it.
Yeah.
And for me, based on that conversation that we had that day, actually at your church, where you remember the cartoons when Bugs Bunny was like playing the drums, playing the trumpet, playing the harmonica, playing the flute he's playing guitar with his toes, like he's carrying the whole band. I think what I am stepping into, my 5-year goal is to be healthy. 5 years from now, what do I want to do? I want to be healthy on the inside. I want to be healthy on the outside. That's what I want. I don't know what the circumstances will be around that, but that's my goal. I think sometimes you can even get lost in your goodness.
Yeah.
Trying so hard to earn it or deserve it or be the most good or be the least naughty. And I think in my season right now, what I feel God taking me through is like, don't just set down the badness, because that's cheap. The world will celebrate that. The world will tell you you're doing a good job. But set down the goodness that's motivated in striving.
Right.
Take the striving that you feel is how you qualify yourself, and even set that down and learn to just sort of be bare in front of God and go, I'm not bringing anything to the table. I'm trying really hard because I want to do a good job, but my goodness is not what gets me your grace. So based on our conversation, like I'm drawing a lot of comparisons, and I would like for people who are maybe listening in to hear your thoughts. I kind of feel like I know them, but don't you feel like that's sort of the smell of what God's doing in the lives of his people right now, is not just set down the badness? Because like 70s, 80s, 90s, it was like, you sign this piece of paper and you're in youth group. Remember this?
Right.
You're like, do you promise not to have sex with your girlfriend?
Yep.
You're like 14 and you're like, here's a piece of paper, and you're like, okay, and this is heaven, right? Getting in heaven. Yep. You do this, and purity, the choir, the fire, and don't drink alcohol, and don't stay out past 10 o'clock. And you're like, okay, you're like a 14-year-old. Okay, I guess. And it was very, very holiness labeled, but very legalistic natured. Mm-hmm. I want you to jump in here. I feel like I don't want to just be my opinion, but it feels like God is starting to move things back towards like, don't just set down the badness, set down why you're pursuing the goodness also, and just find a place of rest.
Yeah, I think that when I think of that passage, one of the things there are a couple of things that come to mind actually. To your point, the first thing that really pops off the page for me is what the gospel is and what the gospel's not. And I think many of us in our culture, I mean, you grew up as a pastor's kid. I know that. And I didn't grow up in the church, but I got indoctrinated fairly young. And what the passage is saying is what the gospel is, what it's not. And what comes to my mind is that I think that many of us think that the gospel is God is good, you're bad, try harder, we'll see you next Sunday. And I don't know if you've ever felt that.
It doesn't feel like good news.
No, not at
It feels
all.
condemning.
Yes. And it's like, oh my gosh, man. It almost feels like, did you ever play Little League at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Little League, it's almost like the gospel is the coach just yelling at you, saying, you can do it. You can do it, buddy. You can do it, but don't blow this for me.
Yeah, but also, yeah.
Right. And it feels that way. And so you try hard. You try so hard to get it right, to do the right things. But there's one problem with that, and that's actually the Bible. Because there are two primary illustrations that the Word of God uses to talk about our righteous deeds and our good deeds. One's in the Old Testament, one's in the New Testament. The one in the Old Testament is Isaiah 64, verse 6, and that's where Isaiah says that our righteous deeds are a polluted garment. If you read the ESV,
What does that actually mean?
Right,
You
so-
really dig down into that.
Yeah.
Bryce. Would you like to expound on a polluted garment?
I would.
Maybe after we shut the cameras
Yeah,
off. and cover-
after we shut the cameras off, I'll give you go ahead.
The point being, and I mean, we're a church, right? But the point being, it's not like Isaiah draws this picture of like, hey, you really tried. It is drawing the most human refuse, just, the thing that we don't want to look at. Like, this is what it amounts to. And it draws a very distinct picture of like, hey, this thing that you're so proud of, that you're parading around as though God is now going to owe you something, it is literally unimaginably repulsive.
Yes. Oh no, absolutely. We can do the PG-13 version after the video. But essentially in Hebrew, it's a lap cloth. It's dirty underwear. And so could you imagine that? Like wrapping that up, putting it in a box, putting a bow on it, and just giving it to a friend.
Yeah.
Then being like, oh my gosh, like why would you give me that?
Like, dude, I worked really hard on that. I have a lot of effort and time in that. Like, you're so unappreciative.
Yeah, I know.
Let me see your lap cloth. I would have lost a bet if you'd have said, hey, is this discussion of a lap cloth going to come up? I just can't see how that would happen. But it is, and the idea is not to encourage you to try even harder.
Right.
It's to show that it's a dead end of like, hey, pause. This goes nowhere. This is a literal road to nowhere. So to try harder is absolutely useless.
Yeah, and so so that's the Old Testament one, and we can talk more about it later. But the one in the New Testament is the one that Paul uses in Philippians chapter 3, verse 8. And at the beginning of 3, when he's talking about, if you remember, he's talking about like his laundry list of righteous things. He's like, man, if there's anyone that has room to boast, it's me. Like I was born out of the right family. I was from the tribe of Benjamin.
Right.
As to the law, I was zealous. I was a Pharisee of Pharisees. But then in verse 8, he basically says, it's all rubbish, man. It is all rubbish. Now,
What is
we
the
don't,
word? What is the word?
Rubbish. So we don't say rubbish unless maybe you're from the UK. We would say,
I would say maybe we should start because don't you feel smarter when you're like, that's rubbish. Man, that guy is well educated.
Right.
Man, that guy's smart.
Yeah, I stepped in rubbish earlier, but what it's slang for animal dung, and so we wouldn't say rubbish, but we would say it's bull, and then the Greek word is skubulon. It's BS. Right. That's what it is. It's bull skubulon. And what's interesting is like what maybe you've noticed is like religious people, we like to compare our skubulon. It's like, well, look at mine. It's stacked so high. And the other, some guys like, well, look at mine. It's a mocha colored. It's like, it's all skubulon, right?
Yeah.
It's all BS.
Again, shocking language used intentionally to draw you away from it, not to draw you through it into more of it. It is literally both uses is like, stop, just stop.
Yeah. And so it's all BS, man. And that's how God sees it.
So here's an honest question. And this is why I like dialogues, because I don't know what your answer is going to be on this one. I feel like that for a period of my life, coming out of the legalism, do good to be good. You do good things so that you can be good. And then if two things, either you prove that you can't and you feel like a loser, or you think that you did and you feel entitled. Either way, it leaves you with nothing. I mean, it is like a roundabout that you just can't get off of. And it's like, it never leads anywhere good. And I probably erred a little on the side of taking advantage of grace and with the right heart. I mean, listen, I'm not like a manners, proper, formal personality. I'm just not. But I think I probably overcorrected a little bit into the like, I needed a season to recover because I was so ingrained, I was so entrenched in that. And so if somebody's listening going, so like what I do doesn't matter, like I can just do whatever I want.
Yeah.
Well, why wouldn't I just do whatever I feel like in the moment? I know what my thoughts are. What would you say to somebody that's like maybe in the process of overcorrecting out of legalism into that mercy orbit?
Yeah, man. So from my story, it was, I came from a very legalistic culture and wanted nothing to do with it, right? And this is before growing up in church and the whole idea, because I didn't grow up in church, but when I got into it, I thought it was the game that you played was being religious and doing the right things and getting the trophies and the badges and the points and all those things. And then I kind of swung back the other way. I was like, oh, there is grace. This is grace. I can do whatever I want.
There's no rules. Do you remember that pizza commercial where they say there's no rules? He takes his shirt off and he's like, there's no rules. He takes his shirt off. She's like, put your shirt on. He's like, there's one rule. As he's finished, like overcorrects and comes back to the middle.
Yeah.
I think everybody goes through that. I think everybody that goes, this sounds more like Jesus, the grace and the mercy thing. I think everybody does overcorrect for a period, a little bit.
Yeah. And I think the problem is that, because the reality is, you've said this, I've said this, sin is fun. It is. I mean,
let me stop right there, because I think people feel like that's a risky thing to say.
Sure.
Except for people who are just like full on in their sin nature right now.
Right.
It's like everybody outside the world will say it. But in church, we're not supposed to admit that.
Right.
And so for you, I feel like that's got to be an empowering moment to acknowledge, like, no, we're drawn to it. We're drawn to our sin nature. Even after salvation, there are lanes of sin that are never going to sting to me the way that other sins sting. And we all have our own little things that we maybe harbor and then condemn, right? So I think that's a brave statement to say that sin is fun, and it doesn't instantly pay off, right? Sometimes sin is something that goes on for a while, and you're like, I think I'm in the clear. I think we're good. And so I hope that helps somebody that's listening to it. I mean, here we are in a church saying like, no, we get it. There's a healthy relationship with the attraction of sin, not healthy relationship with sin, a healthy acknowledgement of like, hey, if you're afraid to admit that you've got a sin issue, like this is a safe place to admit that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just think that I don't want people to miss that.
Right. No, and so I think the other side of that statement is it's fun, but it's not free, right? You're not free. I'm not free. We're still bound, and Jesus came to set us free. And so I just think maybe
It's
I don't know
fun.
if
It's fun, but it's not free. Would be a good thing for people to circle in their notes.
Right.
Fun, but not free.
I mean, I don't know. Have you noticed that? Like, I mean, even in your wild days, right? Jordan Weaver's.
I didn't have any.
In your wild day, did you ever know? Yeah, it's fun. I see that. But could you speak to maybe like how did you not feel free?
So, this coming off of just eating a double quarter pounder from McDonald's 5 minutes ago, I would compare it. There are elements or stages of sin that the effect is immediate. Like if you drink too much the night before to excess and you wake up the next day with a hangover, you can measure the hangover. What you can't measure is maybe the dependency that's developing, right? I can eat a Big Mac and be completely honest in saying like, I feel great right now because I only ate one. I could then draw the conclusion of like, I had a Big Mac and I feel fine. Therefore, what's the big deal? So then what happens is I can resist what I've been told is true. And I start to develop a habit based on short-term comfort that creates long-term suffering. And this isn't just a Christian concept. I think this is anything. It is so easy to convince yourself that the short-term salve or, you can anesthetize life's problems. And then by not dealing with them, they continually get worse. So I go back in my life and like, it was never the day of the issue. It was the months or the weeks that developed into patterns that caused the damage. So if somebody were to go like, hey, I just don't see why this is bad. Have you read Mere Christianity recently?
Not in a while.
Okay, so I just reread it. Highly recommended. But he talks about the ship, a fleet of ships, and he said that we think that as long as we think of we're the ship, right? We're the ship and we're on this journey. And as long as we're not bumping into other boats, then we're fine. Like that's how we gauge morality. We gauge goodness on whether we're sinking other people's boats. And we're not. We're just on the sea. We're like, okay, then we must be okay. He goes, but what about the seaworthiness of that boat? What about the condition of that boat? Because if we're doing things that weaken the seaworthiness of that boat, we're actually decreasing that boat's viability for long-term mission, right? So it's not just, are we bumping into other boats? Are we taking care of ourselves? And the third one is, who owns the boats? Have we been sent to a certain location? Are we on track for what we were created to do? And I think that morality gets missed a lot on that third one. Of like I said, my 5-year goal is to be a healthier person. I want to get healthy on the inside and on the outside. And I'm still clarifying what that's going to mean for me and for my family. But I don't want to lose track of the fact that I am owned by a creator. I was built for a purpose. And when he sets me free to pursue with my whole heart something that's going to be the most fulfilling. So I think sometimes when we view sin in moments, we miss the magnitude. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's like God's going through this big lifetime transformation. I've started getting up. Perfect example. I've started getting up and doing push-ups in the morning. Right now, you can't tell a bit of difference. And I've been at it for a while. I'm sore. My body hurts more. I don't look any different. Right. So in a moment, you miss the magnitude. The magnitude is what I do over a period of time. What I do in a moment is actually like a check mark. It goes down before it starts to come back up. And so that's a very long answer, but I think that's where I go to like, okay, I have a really dishonest relationship with sin because I don't want people to see it. I don't want to admit that it's fun, but I also don't realize the long-term damage that it creates. So I don't think that we have ever stopped and sat down and had a real open, honest, I don't say ever, but recently in my mind, the church hasn't sat down and had a real open, honest discussion about what a sin nature is or does.
Man, that's such a good word. I'm gonna have to go back and read C.S. Lewis's book.
Dude, I'm telling you what, that to me helps me categorize my life of like, okay, I'm not doing any damage to anybody else. Well, that's great. I mean, that's a great start, but that's universally sort of accepted of like, well, if you're not doing any damage, you must be good. Actually, you're in. You're probably going to go to heaven now. And it's like, no. Even though we understand that morality on a singular level, I won't say names, but there's a pastor. I heard this story, and I'm just gonna.
I say this with no judgment, knowing people are going to hear the judgment in it, that I intend not to be there, and this is going to ruffle some feathers. So listen, I'm looking right in the camera. I want you to hear me say, I am sorry if this upsets you. I genuinely am. It just draws such a good point of internal health of the boat. Like, I'm not taking anybody else out, but like, if my boat's in disarray, I'm still not as useful, and especially if I'm not on mission, right? There's this pastor, and he went to England or the UK or somewhere to go meet this famous minister or author or writer or something, and I don't remember who he was going to meet, but he gets over there, and the guy's smoking a cigar. And, you know, here we are, this American version of Christianity and very American version of morals. And, you know, and he goes, I got to be honest, I guess I'm just really surprised to see you smoking a cigar. And he said, the guy, this famous minister that's just had this giant impact for the kingdom, takes a cigar out of his mouth and goes, you're fat. And it's like, we're so in tune with causing damage to other people, but we let ourselves off the hook if we're only damaging ourselves. Because when we damage ourselves, we decrease the effectiveness of the mission that we're called to. So what it does, here's what I hope people get out of that. I hope everybody that's upset with me for saying that will hear this. The encouragement is to take care of yourself also, that you matter. Like, your life matters in this. And let's not categorize. I mean, for years, you could name the top 3 sins in the church. I mean, we've had these favorite sins that we pick on, and it's like, hey, are we causing damage to each other? Are we causing damage to ourselves? But also, when those 2 things are in place, are we remaining on mission? Are we actually being transformed to go make an impact for the kingdom, for a creator that made us to live outside of our limitations?
I think that when it comes to this topic too, I think that last thing that you mentioned is probably the most misrepresented, that there's a mission to be on. Why do you think that is? Like, what is that our fault? Like, as pastors?
Bryson, this is my podcast, so I'm going to be the one asking all the questions here. I feel like I've done all the talking. Sure. No, I'm kidding. I think that sin at its core is a desire to be God, and you'll never see it in the beginning. No one ever says, I want to be God in the beginning. But greed is like a little bite of a desire to be God, a little too much control. That's why giving is such a woven in narrative of what it means to be in the kingdom, is that we're giving away, trusting that the power is beyond our control. And I think greed is that. I think sexual immorality, I think that indulgences, addiction is to try to take it all in under ourselves. If given full reign, I keep going back to this quote, and it amazes me that this isn't an easier quote to metabolize or to digest, but I haven't gotten a lot of good feedback on it. But Nietzsche said, verily I laugh at those who think themselves good because they have no teeth. Meaning, they think they're good because they don't have the opportunity to be bad. Like, they're not in a powerful position. Of course you're not taking advantage of the poor. You are poor. Of course you're not doing this. You don't have the opportunity to do that. And until you're in a position to see it played out, I think we would be very surprised to find out what's at the root of our own heart. I think we really would. I think at the end of the day, we don't want to believe that we're on mission for God. I think we want to believe that God's riding along on our boat with us. And that's a fundamental behavior shifting dynamic that it's like we'll hyper-focus on the first one. Maybe we'll reference the second one and just completely write off the third one and think we're going to skate and get through life. So in your mind, because you pastor, your church is such a unique place. It's young people. It is your thick spots are thin spots. Like, your admin is super, super high. And we're working on that. Shout out Katie and Kyle, leadership team. Like, we got some people going to work on those specific things, and we've used some of your stuff. But you see a different group than the group I see. We're very rural. We're like, our digital thing is a big deal. Do you think that even in the differences in our demographics, do you think that that's true of the third, which is staying on mission?
So this is just an observation, and I'm not an expert by any means. It's just an anecdotal observation. What I've noticed so I am a millennial. I hate that word, by the way. It drives me nuts.
Well, how old are you?
35.
Yep.
So
I think what's the date?
I don't know.
I think it's 80. It doesn't matter. Sorry,
Whatever.
Keep going. You're a millennial.
Yeah. So what I've noticed is like what's on the other side of what people are striving for. So for this younger generation, the ones that we ministered, young adults, young professionals, young families, we just seem to be in this season and have been, and it's really indicative of this group. I don't want to put everybody in this box, but they are very cause oriented.
Yeah.
So I think the temptation, or maybe not the temptation, the reality is it's just easier for them to be on mission because that's how they're more wired. And,
Yeah.
and maybe for the other boxes that are out there, the different generational boxes, I think that there is some level of more security. Golly, you said something when you came and preached to us about just the unlimited, reckless ability of youthfulness.
Yeah.
And that struck a chord with me. I was like, that is exactly what it is. And so they're willing to go for the cause or the mission or whatever. So that's probably not going to be their temptation to not do that.
I'm surprised in a good way. I think there's a lot of good that comes with it, but the social causes and the social justice, where it ranks on our young people's radars. So that I like to hear you say that, like that maybe mission is the thing that's going to be okay. So then again, young people, if you're listening, if the boat captain, the person that owns the ship, the fleet of ships, says, I need you to go to India, and they go, well, we want to go to China. Whether you miss it because you believe in the cause or whether you miss it out of just blatant disobedience, is there a difference? Or if you miss it, you miss it. Because a cause-driven generation can still miss it if they pick the wrong cause, right? So how do you introduce that thought to somebody who's like, I want my life to matter, I want it to be meaningful, I want to accomplish something, I want to be that kernel of wheat that breaks open and becomes something bigger? It's almost more, maybe it's almost more important for that generation to have clarity on what the mission is, because they've already stated it's a value. So, I mean, yeah, that's an interesting. I haven't really thought of it in that direction, but that makes sense that if they're already mission minded, point them in a direction. So what do you do? What do you do?
Right. So it's so much to go back to the idea of the captain in the boat that you just brought up. It's not so much saying this mission's better than this mission. I think it's saying who's your captain, who is your Lord, because wherever you are is your mission. You know that. I know that.
Yeah.
And then go with that great passion and that zeal under the direction and under the authority of that captain, of the one who owns the boat.
Right.
And then go because it goes back to the my kingdom, his kingdom conversation.
Right.
Like, am I doing this for my kingdom, to build my reputation, to build my resume, to build whatever.
It's just religion repackaged.
Right.
Goodness for being owed. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, who's in charge? Who's driving the boat? And then go, because I think it goes back to like God's will, like the God's will's questions that we get, and like the fear of, am I in God's will? Am I outside of God's will? It's like, good grief, man.
I remember those years. I think that's what I think that legalism drives that conversation because it's so getting it right oriented. Everything orients itself to proper performance.
Yes.
Doing it right. Am I doing it right? If the whole focus is doing it right, the question would be, am I doing it right?
Right. Well, and one of the things that I think about, and my counselor actually told me this, it was a fantastic illustration. He said, God's will is a big backyard, and there's tons of toys in the backyard. Just go pick one. You got to remember whose house you're in.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so good. Because I struggled. Maybe you struggle with it too. It's like, okay, God's will is ministry. God's will is putting on the pastor's hat and wearing that. It's like, well, no, that's not. It's not just that.
Right.
And it gets into calling. Like, God's calling on my life is this,
Right.
and then you've probably experienced this. I have. I've had friends that just get locked in on that idea of calling. This is my calling. And then, like, when it doesn't pan out or it doesn't go well, they cling to it unnecessarily.
Yeah, they go down with it.
Yeah.
So Jamie Winship one time said that you have to understand the difference between identity and role. Because, like, if you were to go, my identity is that I'm a dad. Well, the problem is being a dad is a role, not an identity. And if I don't understand that, then I'm drawing my identity from my children instead of bringing my identity to my children. And that if you can draw the distinction between identity and role, and that's been hugely helpful for me, because what you're saying is my calling. Well, like, wait a minute. What you're saying is your identity. If you know your identity, then no matter where you go, which toy you're playing with, you never forget your name, right? You're not like train conductor over here. You're not like slide person over here. You're like, no, I know who I am, and I'm on the slide, or I'm playing with the train, or I'm playing with the dog, but I know who I am. And I think that missions will gradually change over time. Like I'm in this weird life transition right now, and I'm trying to cling to that identity that as things are changing and shifting and taking a new shape. Right now, it's kind of a lifeline. It's a survival technique, because I see people, and I know that you do too. And I'm the most this way. I'm the most this way when I try to pursue security, because when I try to pursue security versus freedom, then I try to think of like, okay, what would someone in my position do versus what do I feel called to do? What do I believe God called me to do, even if that draws me out of security for a season? Because I would rather find it out there. And you see this, pastors that get lost in the church machine, and then they get old and they forgot how to speak the language. They forgot what the world looks like outside. They're so lost in the church machine that it's like the church, then what happens to the church? It has no longer has any connection to the world. So how do you do that? You are 35. That's way too young to be a lead pastor. Someone should have told you that. So what do you do at 35? You got young kids. I mean, I know that just from knowing you, your heart is to be, I guess, full, healthy, whole person, to be a husband, and be a dad. I mean, what's your balancing act look like right now in this season? Not what will it look like, but in this season, what does your balancing act look like?
Yeah. So in regards to identity and just that conversation in general, not doing a great job at it, right? It's really, really hard.
Did you just admit publicly that you are in a season of struggling?
Yes, I did.
You're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, I know.
We'll edit that out.
Sorry, I'm.
Just keep going.
I might be the worst guest you've ever had. It's hard, man. It really, really is hard to, because you can flip the identity and the role thing, like Jamie Winship was talking about, so easily, and it's so hard to remember who you are. I heard somebody say this one time. They were getting out of ministry, and the question was asked, like, well, what are you looking forward to the most now that you're retiring or getting out? And he said, getting to know Jesus.
Yeah.
And, oh man, that got me.
I'm going to cry through this. I can tell you already, because I love him so much. But I've got a friend of mine that called me one day, just completely out of the blue. We talked for maybe 3 minutes, and it will go down in my life as one of the most meaningful 3 minutes of my life. He had pastored, and then he got called into other stuff. And he calls me one day, and he said, I got to tell you something, but let me finish where I'm going with this before you make a judgment. He said, I set my Bible down for 3 years and didn't pick it up. He said, I still love Jesus, but I know the basics of what's in there. You know, being a pastor, it's like your job to go study it. And he said, I felt led, which this goes against all sorts of my theology, right? I felt led to set my Bible down for 3 years. He said, I didn't pick it up. I can tell you exactly in my house where it's at. He said, I picked it up this morning, and let me tell you what it said. And he goes through, and I mean, it's this like rich, just beautiful revelation of like God's nature. And I mean, you know, when somebody just finds something and it just comes up like oil out of the ground. And so I'm listening, and he said, I want to tell you that someday God may bring you to a season where you set down the work of picking up the word. And if it's an encouragement to you, just know that when you go back and you pick it back up, it'll be for you. It won't be for everybody else. Hey, I got to go. And I'm like, and like, it was a weird mix of like conviction, because I know sometimes I go to the word and I'm like, can you just give me a sermon's worth? Can you give me just enough? And like the way that I preach, I know the way you preach too, is like, I'll put 60 or 70 hours into a sermon. Like I have no desire to stand up and be unprepared when I preach. It's not that. I want when people watch a sermon a third or fourth time to be like, oh, I didn't catch that the first time. Like it's just a held value. But I long for that richness again that says, God, what there's a way to misinterpret what I'm about to say, but I'll say it anyway. Like, what's in it for me? Not what do I get out of it?
Right.
Not that, but like, what do you have for me that I could find that would make me closer to that goal of being healthy on the inside, healthy on the outside, you know? And I take that and I look at the people in the church and I go, I want that for them also. I want that for every single person to go, I'm not asking you to pledge your fealty to our church structure and like, because that's security, right? Security is numbers. If you want to know why people talk about like attendance and giving, hey, there's security wrapped up in that. I want to be willing to go, hey, those things matter. They matter. I mean, it helps us do the things that we do. But if we lose all those things and people start finding Jesus in that Ephesians 2, I was lost and now I'm found sort of way, I hope I wouldn't miss that in an effort to replace it with security or safety.
Yeah, it almost makes you. So when we preached on Ephesians 2 recently, it was wrapped up in a, you know how we do series and stuff. It was wrapped up in a series on hymns, and we talked about the hymn "Amazing Grace," written by John Newton, and part of the sermon is going through the story of who John Newton was, and it for him, I mean. Crazy story. Just go look it up. It's wild. I don't have time for it right now. But he gets to the point, his conversion point, it comes with a great storm. And that's where he cries out to God. It almost like there's something inside of me, maybe inside of you, that just like longs, like, God, just give me that storm to remind me that you're there.
Right.
To remind me of what it means to call out to you, to want you, because it's so easy to just do the work.
Yeah. Yeah, to lose the awe of it.
Yes.
So you're a Texas person, I'm a Texas person, and that's in Texas, if people haven't been from there, every now and then you get a storm that comes through and you see it coming and it's so big and it's so powerful and it might have a tornado in it. You don't know. It could be a hurricane. It's just Texas. You don't know. And you have this feeling of being very, very small. Like, hey, the magnitude and the awe and awe does this weird thing where you're scared of it and you want to get away from it, but you're intrigued and you want to get near it. And we don't live in those kind of storms here. You don't have those kind of storms here, but that's what I want to experience in my relationship with God. That I don't forget how big He is. I don't forget who He is, and I'm fearful of what He might drag me through, but I'm intrigued by what He could take me to also. And I don't want to get to a place where a boring 35-minute burnout treatment cycle robs me of the storms of who Jesus is.
Yeah. Well, to go back to Ephesians 2, man, it says, so the first 3 verses is basically, you were this, or you are this, you're a sinner, dead in your trespasses. And then you get to verse 4, and it's like, but God, right? Two of my favorite words in all of the Bible. But if you keep reading, it says, but God, being rich in mercy, made us alive. I think that's the problem. We can still be in church and in even pastors and still be dead and
still
not
be in
alive,
verse
not
1,
awake.
2, and 3. Yeah.
Yeah, not awake. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to walk. I don't want to be another episode of The Walking Dead. And I'll be honest. I mean, we're online.
It's painful.
And stuff,
It's painful how accurate The Walking Dead. Yes, that's exactly how it feels when you're in it too. Of like, I another day came and went, and what happened? I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's an accurate way of describing The Walking Dead.
Yeah, no, it's just like, God, wake me up, open my eyes. And it's like, oh, I just long for that. And so I tell that story about the guy saying, I'm looking forward to getting to know Jesus, because I don't want to wait until I'm 40 or 50 or 60 to have to retire from what I'm doing to get to know Jesus. What do I need to do to reorganize my life, to turn it upside down even? To have those moments where it's just me and Him, and so part of the answer to that for us and for my family has been counseling, honestly, and it's been really, really helpful to slow down. Reading some better books on slowing down has been really helpful, but it's hard, man. It's really hard to get out of the malaise and the normality. Like it just feels like we're on the merry-go-round of normality.
Right. Well, and I think that people go through, we're going to have to wrap this up and we're going to continue on a podcast here in a second. But I think if there's someone listening that understands what that feeling of like like a midlife crisis of like, I would rather, it's kind of like this weird internal, I think everybody's got this weird internal arson who's like, maybe we should just light it on fire and just see, because at least then something's happening, right? And I think that's what a life on mission actually does. The healthier version of that is like, you know what? I was gonna die anyway.
Right.
I'm eventually headed that way anyway. God, why not let's just figure it out now. I'll risk it. I'll risk it now, because maybe by following you, I find out what life is instead of just feeling like this slow burden of daily death. So if you're watching, we're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna do a podcast on this with no video. We're just gonna turn the mics on and talk about the PG-13 version of whatever it was you were referencing a minute ago. So, hey, man, long overdue. I love that you live near us. I'm personally hoping this is something we can do again. I appreciate you jumping on. Thank you.
Yeah, man. No, thanks for having me. Anybody watching, thanks for listening. I told Jordan I was going to probably maybe the most uncommon guest on the podcast, but thanks for having me, man. I love you, buddy. Appreciate you.
Oh chases me down and fights till I'm found and leaves the 99. And I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
I just want to go back to the bridge of this song. It just talks about there's nothing that Jesus wouldn't do to come after us. There's no shadow that he won't light up. There's no mountain he wouldn't climb up. There's no wall he wouldn't kick down. No lie he wouldn't tear down. I just need to hear this over and over today. Maybe you need to hear it over and over. So let's sing this together. There's no shadow.
There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. I declare, there's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, we know there's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Thank you, Lord. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down and fights till I'm found and leaves a 99. Oh, I couldn't earn it and I don't deserve it. Still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
Yeah, Father, we just believe those words today, wherever we are, whatever situation we're facing. God, you will leave the 99 just to find the one. God, we can't earn your love. We don't deserve your love. But because you are love, you give your love to us freely. God, your love is overwhelming. We can't even fathom how big it is for us. And we're so grateful that it's never ending, despite what we have done, despite what we're facing. It's never ending love. We thank you for your love. Amen.
That brings Sunday morning to an end.
Yeah, it does. But we'll be here same time, same place next week.
We will.
You know it.
We'll also be on Facebook at 8 p.m.
Yeah. Pacific Standard Time.
And so it's not goodbye. It's just goodbye.
And see you later. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. We love you. We will see you again next week. Reach out to us this week if you'd like. And love each other. Love people around you. And bye for now.
Bye for now.